Lea Cartwright. Lea earned her BA in social work at UNR and a master's in public administration at UNR. Also, she also has certificates in mediation and in conflict resolution, which must be very useful in her work at the legislature, where she is a lobbyist, mostly for nonprofits, as I understand it. She started out with the firm of J.K. Belts, and when Ms. Belts retired, Lea assumed ownership of the company, and now it's called Cartwright NV. Is that right?
That is correct. Cartwright NV Government Affairs. Thank you. And I'm now the president, and it's a big transition.
So, Lea,
thank you.
The platform is yours.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Kevin, and thank you all for coming this morning, for being here early on a Sunday to talk politics and voting and elections. And you know, this is the only group I know of that gets up early to hear my 17-page spreadsheet, you know, and gets excited about it.
And on Sunday morning.
And on Sunday morning, yeah. You have other places you could be, and you're here with us, so I appreciate that. I did bring two other books in case folks are interested. This is Unrig. It's How to Fix Our Broken Democracy. It's a graphic novel. And it talks about campaign finance reform, the issues, especially with getting into Congress and getting into the federal positions. Those races are multi-million dollars. Lots of times, you know, the regular folks, you and I, are kind of out from those races just because there's no way we can raise $25 million. I mean, I can't. Maybe some of you can, but I cannot. So this is a good book, a graphic novel explaining that. I also brought The Little Book of Love. This is 267 words for love in Sanskrit. And so one of the things that I find helpful at UUFNN, and now we've shifted from the tenets to our centering love, so this has become even more impactful. But how do we center love in all aspects, in all that we do? And that is really hard in politics. I think some of you have run into that, right? Especially when we're talking about folks who are so diametrically opposed to our personal opinions and our core beliefs, but we still have to interact with them. And I do believe in the inherent dignity and worth of every single human being on the planet. I do believe we can find common ground, although sometimes that common ground is just that the ground exists. Sometimes we can't even agree on what shape the ground is, you know. Is it a flat earth or is it round, right? But it is necessary to center love. And so, that said, I have pulled from the 267 words for love, just to get us started, two words, and I'm probably going to pronounce them wrong, but I will try. So the first is Kamadeva, the god of love that creates, preserves, or destroys at will. And the second word is even longer, and I'm going to mess this up entirely. Sayadaira Garamaya, composed of love, heroism, and generosity. So I bring this just because there are many different ways to express love, to accept love, and I think one of those is through civics and through politics, bless you, and through having democratic discourse and being able to have that dialogue with people across the aisle, no matter the political party, the conflict mediation, de-escalation, negotiation techniques, all of those come in handy. But if you remember the humanity of every person and you think of how do we center love in our relations with each other, I think that makes the conversations in politics, bless you, a little easier to have. That said, let's get into some pretty, y'all are a smart group, so I'm going to get in real deep today and do first a broad overview. Most of you have some spreadsheets or charts on your chairs that you can peek at, and we'll pull them up. So broadly, right, in the Nevada legislative system, we have 42 assembly members and 21 senators. Every 2 years, all 42 assembly people are up for election, and half of our Senate is up for election. This year, we also have our federal delegation, so our congressional representatives are up for election, and for the first time in almost 2 decades, right here in Congressional District 2, is an open seat because Mark Amadei has retired. And those of you who have the spreadsheets with you will see there are so many candidates who have put their names in for CD2 that I had to split it into 2 separate pages just to have the Democrats and the Republicans. It's the first time that's happened for me. So I bring that up because we need to talk about the importance of the primaries. And I don't think I'm talking to anybody who is unaware about how important voting in the primaries really is. And it's, you know, I think it can be difficult to see if you're not looking at the big picture, if you're not looking at the entire spreadsheet of our election system. There are, and I wrote them down here, there are several races that will only be decided in the primary, right? And you can see that on that chart. If there are only candidates in one party listed, that party will win the seat. It's just a matter of which person. And I did some math a couple years back when my current senator, Lea Cartwright, was in the assembly. And she ran in the assembly when it was just Republicans running. So I think there were 3 or 4 different Republicans in the primary. No Democrat. Again, this is back when she was in the assembly. So no Democrat was running. Only primary voters were eligible, right? If you were a registered Republican in that district, you got a vote. And if you look at the total population in that district, the total number of registered voters, including Republican, Democrat, Independent, nonpartisan, and other, about 8% of that district is who actually elected that representative. 8%. And that's what happens when we only have people running in the primaries. No one else gets a choice. Your Democrats, your nonpartisans, your Independent American Party, your Green Party, none of us, if we are not registered for that particular party, get to vote. And so I don't want to tell you need to pick a party and play in the primaries. And I know this will make my friend very, very mad. I am a strategic voter. I change my voter registration to vote in the primaries every time based on who's running and who I think I need to help vote for or against. I don't think that's a popular way to vote. I know folks get really attached to their voter registration card and how long you've been a member of one party or the other. I would argue that, especially in these times, it does not matter. It does not matter if you have 20 years as a Democrat, 20 years as a Republican. We need all of the votes that we can get. And so I would urge you to take a look at these charts, find your district, and if it's just 2 Democrats in a primary, especially for Senate and Assembly, your local elections, please make sure you're registered to vote in those primaries. For example, I live in CD2, but I also live in Senate District 16 and Assembly District 40. Assembly District 40 has a 3-way Republican primary right now, and of those 3, there's only one that I would trust to represent me in the legislature, right? So I will likely be a Republican for the primary, which means I also will vote in the Republican primary for CD2, which is very exciting for me because I know some of the folks in that district and who are running, and I definitely have my preference. So I think it's important that we understand there are multiple ways to participate in the primary, and I urge you to find the way that's best for you, especially in these races that will only have a winner because of a primary.
So, Lea, I think you said there were 16 races that'll be decided in the primary. Is that right?
I think I said 13 last night.
Oh, 13.
Well, it's okay. So the way I look at it, and you'll see it on that what I call the splat chart, which is that summary front and back page. If you see the lock next to them, especially if it's a gray lock, they're just not running. There are several districts where, let's see, for example, Senate District, nope, it's in the Assembly. Assembly District 1. So if we take a look at Assembly District 1, there's 5 Democrats running and 1 person who's put their name in as a nonpartisan. Just as an aside, there are more nonpartisans who've put their name in to run for office than I've ever seen in the 11 years that I've been doing this work. Lots of reasons for that, but I do caution folks against running as a nonpartisan because there are extra steps, and a lot of the folks who put their names in as nonpartisan don't read the extra steps that are involved to make it to the ballot, and so they very rarely make it to the general ballot. They have to get an additional 100 signatures from their district of support before they can get onto that general election ballot, and those are due in June, and most of those folks miss the deadline. So the people in the nonpartisan bucket, I don't really count, just because they don't tend to be viable candidates. So if you look at Assembly District 1, whoever wins that Democrat primary is going to be the representative for Assembly District 1. And that's, so 32.25% of that district is registered Democrat, but that's still much less than half of the electorate in that district who is choosing their representative. It just bothers me. It's a disenfranchisement, right? We can't participate fully in our election system. Okay, so yes, I do have a list of districts to go over if you're interested in those ones. But I also wanted to talk about some of the political games and the partisan games that are happening. One of them I already mentioned, the strategic voting, right? I'll vote in the Republican primary coming up in both CD2 and my Assembly district. Other folks may choose to do that, and you may have, some people who are with a different party who are supporting those more extreme candidates, trying to get them on the ballot. So in Congressional District 2, you might have a Democrat-funded PAC or a progressive-funded PAC that is supporting someone like Dave Flippo, right? The guy who moved from CD4 to CD2, who I think he went to prison for a while, and he was part of the Trump train and all of these things. But he may be supported by Democrats in order to put up a weaker candidate in that district. That can happen. So you'll see that kind of partisan funding. You'll also see, and this was huge after the film tax credit vote in the special session, labor unions are putting up primaries against many Democrats. So if you look at, I think it's Senate District, the first one, Senate District 2, Edgar Flores, he's been in office since 2015. The Carpenters Union, labor union, are fully funding his opponent in the primary, Isaac Barron, simply because Edgar Flores voted no on the film tax credit bill in the special session. The same thing is happening to Senator James Orenshall in Senate District, I think he's 21, here at the bottom. He also voted no on the film tax credit bill. He's a children's defense attorney for kids in foster care in the juvenile justice system, been in office since 2007. Before that, his mom was in office. But because he voted no on one bill in opposition to the labor unions, he now has a primary opponent. And that's important because primaries are expensive. I would say about $250,000 for an assembly race, $500,000 for a Senate race, and then double that amount to get through the general. So all of these primary races they make things expensive. So anybody who's donated to political campaigns in the past, you are likely being inundated with calls right now because they need funding for these primary elections. The cannibalism within both the Democrat and Republican Party is painful and expensive. But that's what we're seeing. And that's how Nevada works, right? We have a culinary union, a labor union, especially down south, that's very strong. We have a resort association, which doesn't really exist in other states, also very strong. They tend to run, Republican but moderate candidates. And then we also, and I think some folks, this is more in the background, but we have NV Energy and Southwest Gas, who are also funneling money to candidates because they have energy issues that they want to see addressed before the legislature, whether that's pro-data center or against the data centers, or the use of water, that's a big one. But they want candidates in there who are attuned to their issues, and so they fund them now, and they run them in the primary. And so we're seeing, at least I'm seeing, a lot more of that this election cycle, with a lot more animosity behind it, unfortunately, even within the parties. Just a lot of anger, and part of me thinks that's just because we have that rhetoric from the federal level on down, and so we're not immune to it. We've now caught the grumpiness. I don't know how else to describe it. We've caught the grump. We've caught the grump. So that it's going to be an interesting election season. So I've talked a little bit about funding. I've talked a little bit about the political and partisan games that are going on in the background. I do have on my notes, I can review how to look at the contribution and expense reports if anybody is that invested, if you're interested in knowing how to do that. So the contribution and expense reports are important to look at. There are 4 dates that those are due. We just had one turned in for the first quarter. The next one is due April 15th, tax day, contribution expense reporting deadline. Very exciting. I have a spreadsheet for this too, but I can't print it out. It's like well over 1,000 pages. Well, I track all the contributions and expenses of all of the folks running for office, because you can find strange things in there, in the money. Everything goes back to money, obviously. But so for example, one thing that I found is Democrats will donate to the Professional Firefighters Union, to Las Vegas Metro, and then those groups, those PACs, will turn around and give money to Republican candidates, and vice versa. That happens in reverse as well.
So you mean all of the money, or do they split it?
They split it up. They split it up, but it's still, you know, you can see when you look at the flow of money and you see Democrats giving money to attend these PAC events where they're doing interviews, and then that money from those same PACs, the political action groups, going to their opponents. You know, it just makes you wonder, who is watching this? Who is making these decisions? And you can also find things out like who is actually running these PACs, who started them. You know, Bradley Schrager, who's a lawyer down south, he runs like 15 PACs, right? They're all progressive. They're all progressive, all different kinds of things. But you know, if you're called to give, and they're asking you to give money to Mi Familia Vota or New Day Nevada, a Better Nevada PAC, all of those are the same person. It's all going to the same place. You just, you know, different amounts can be spent. Your $10,000 contribution limit is gone because you have multiple places to donate to. You can find those people who are getting around the campaign donation limits when you're looking at the money. So I do monitor all of that. The next one on April 15th will be after the filing deadline, so we'll have all of these candidates in there. We'll be able to see who's getting money, who's not getting money, who's self-funded. Danny Tarkanian, he always self-funds his campaigns. You're allowed to loan your campaign pretty much infinite amounts of money. Individuals like you and I, we can give $5,000 in the primary, $5,000 for the general, $10,000 total. You could give a total of $10,000 right now, and then if your primary candidate loses, they have to refund you at least $5,000. So campaign finance is I should probably make that a separate forum now that I'm now that I'm on that track. Actually,
A rich person's game.
It is. At the same time, you know, I sent $25 to a candidate down south who I'm a big fan of, and it matters. They notice, right? Mostly because I sent it via text message, so they immediately got a text that said, Lea has donated to your campaign. So, you know, it's nice to get those little $20, $50, $100 campaign donations from individuals, because then they don't have to fully rely on casinos, mining, energy, tobacco, pharma, the big healthcare stuff. Yeah. And they do notice, but it will not get you, you know, the sit-down meeting with the governor. You need at least $50,000 for that, right? There's minimums for everything.
Are any candidates cleanable then? Or?
No. Well, okay, I take that back. I shouldn't be so flippant about it. There are several candidates who pride themselves on running without taking money from any kind of industry or corporation, or who never talk to lobbyists. And that's a hard one for me, right? Like, yes, I am a lobbyist, but also a constituent, and I live here. And I like to think I'm pretty darn good at what I do. So it hurts my feelings when they don't want to talk to me. But there are a couple, and you'll see that on their campaign websites. This book that I brought, Unrig, it talks about why that's unfeasible currently in our system, especially at the federal level. You can't not accept big donations and have any hope to make it in Congress. It's just too expensive. Millions, right? We're talking $250,000 for a local assembly race in the primary, and it just increases exponentially as you go up into higher offices. Yeah, it's, you know, I don't know what life was like before campaign finance, so this is the system I live in and I'm used to, but I guess we do it differently in other parts of the world, so we could try. Okay, so I've talked a little bit about campaign expenditures. The next date I mentioned spoilers briefly, one second.
So let me just ask about those 13 primaries that are going to be determined, determinative of the outcome. How many of those are Republican primaries and how many of those are Democrat?
So I have, most are Democrat.
Oh, really?
Yes, most are Democrat, and I think that's just because of the no votes in the film tax credit bill. So a lot of union and culinary money went into funding their primary opponents. So it's mostly Democrats that are being hit that way. A couple Republican districts, in fact, one up here, so my district in Carson, 80-40. The race in District 39, I think, is really interesting. This is it's Douglas County, a little bit of Lyon County. So District 39 was represented by Republican Ken Gray in the last legislative session. He was then appointed by President Trump to a veteran cemetery position in Washington, D.C. So he resigned his position as the assemblyman here. This was before the November film tax credit special session. He resigned, went to D.C. His seat was appointed by the Douglas County and Lyon County Commissions. Blaine Osborne is the current assemblyman for that district. He is a Republican, same party. He's been with the Nevada Rural Hospital Partners for 12 years now, I think. He's been working in the legislature longer than that as like an attaché and assistant, so he has experience. So he is technically the incumbent. Ken Gray quit his DC job 6 months in, didn't like DC, came back, is now running in that primary when he said he wouldn't. There's another candidate in that district too, which is, it's wild to me. So there's actually four Republicans running in District 39 in the primary. Does anybody here live in Douglas County? Anybody at District 39 represent? No? So you don't have to worry about it too much, but if you know anybody who lives out there, please register Republican to vote in your primary.
When is the deadline to change your affiliation if you wanted to vote in the primary?
That is a great question. Nevada has a law that allows you to change your registration up to the same day.
Okay.
So you can change your registration same day and then change right back. Well, and this might turn into another forum topic, right? This is where folks who support open primaries, they have their position on why we should have open primaries. And then there are other folks who say, I don't want Democrats messing with my Republican candidates. I don't want Republicans messing with my Democrat candidates. You either join the club or you don't get a vote, right? So there are two different opinions on primary elections and how that works. I do think Nevada is one of the states that's made some pretty decent progress in not opening the primaries, but just allowing you to have that option. It does make it difficult, right? Like I want to vote in my Republican primary for Assembly, but I would love to vote in the Democrat primary for CD too. I have to make a choice. I have to figure out which party I will align with for the primary. And then hope my neighbors help in the primary in a good way. So yeah, up to the day of. Yeah.
And the cost, the $250,000 or the $500,000, where's the majority of that going? Mailers and advertising, or where does that go?
That's a good question. So if we look at the two.
Repeat the question.
Oh yes. So the question was the $250,000, $500,000 for campaign finance, the donations that come in. What is that used for? So number one, it's mail. You will all get the mail, right? You get the ads in your mailbox. The printing is expensive. If you're running under if you've been endorsed by the Democratic caucus, you're required to use a union print shop, so it increases the price a little bit. You have, and the postage, obviously, that comes with that. You have to pay for things like your walkers, people who will go out and knock on doors with you, your materials that you leave at the door, shoes, right? You're walking around, you're doing miles and miles of door knocking. You need to go through at least 2 pairs of shoes, right? Like that's how you tell if you've been knocking on enough doors, is if you're going through enough shoes. Recently, our campaign finance system changed the rules slightly so that you could use your campaign expenditures for personal security. So that is a sign of the times we're living in. You can use it for personal security. They did remove the ability to use campaign finance for things like child care and dependent care, which I thought was frankly sexist, but that's neither here nor there. You can now use it for primary or for security, which is good. Paying people to walk for you, typically you're paid minimum wage, but they do have field organizers who make a little bit more money than that. And then you're required to pay kind of like dues to the caucus if you're endorsed by the caucus, and that gives you access to their policy staff, their campaign staff, but also the voter precinct data and all of the, like the data that I've given you is very high level. You can get into precinct level data. You can look at, Gaia, what magazines you subscribe to. They know that kind of thing, so they can tell which way, yes, if you're an engaged and active voter, you'll get one type of response. If you're maybe an inactive voter, you're going to get a different kind of response. All of these, the data metrics, it's a lot of money to do that, and so that's where it's all going. And parties, getting food and doing more fundraisers and travel. If you're running for a statewide race, you need to visit the entire state, so you need the money to fly, you need the money for gas. If you look at the campaign finance reports, you can find folks' favorite coffee shops and you can stalk them. Not that I urge you to do that, because I already do, but that is something you can find, right? You can find their favorite coffee shops. You can see how much Assemblyman Yeager was spending on donuts every week to provide donuts to the legislative building. That's you can see where the money is going, which is great. Any other questions? We've got a few other.
All of these charts that you handed out today, are they on your website and available for public?
No. I consider the UU one of my clients, like a pro bono client at this point, So no, I don't put these on our website. I will email them to you if you're interested in having a copy. They are in Kevin's email box and Michelle's email box, so you can definitely get a copy. And we update them monthly with the change in voter registration, so you can see the differences in, Democrat, Republican, nonpartisan, and other. The other category, just quickly, includes the Independent American Party, the Green Party, and there's one other one that I've forgotten. Not the Tea Party or the Tequila Party.
Not limited.
Oh, Libertarian, thank you. Yeah, Libertarian is the other one. Quick funny story, the Independent American Party, they have the ability to put candidates on here simply because people will check IAP thinking they're registering as independent, and then they end up in the IAP party. And they have said, Lynn Hoffman and Janine Hansen have said they did that on purpose to try and get more people to register for their party. So again, back to political partisan gamesmanship.
So how many Hansons are running?
I think 4 actually. I think there's 4 Hansens. Ira is running unopposed for Senate. Let's see, and then his wife, I think she's also unopposed. Let me double check.
Yeah, she's unopposed too.
So Ira and Alexis, they are a married couple. They're conservative up in Sparks. I actually really enjoy working with them because they tell you exactly what they think is almost never in alignment with what I need them to do, but they're very open about it, which is helpful for me.
They're good plumbers though.
They're great plumbers. Great
That's
plumbers.
our league last week.
How does he get unemployed?
How does he get unopposed?
Nobody runs it.
Why
Yeah.
does nobody?
So take a look at the registration breakdown for that district, right? It's nearly 40% Republican, 31.8% nonpartisan, 21% Democrats. There's probably not enough Democrats interested in trying to run, right?
For another.
Yeah. And so he doesn't even have to run anymore, but he will still try and raise money to help his other, the cohort of Senate Republicans. Yeah.
What about people who have won, like an AOC? Is there a way to run a progressive campaign without
To repeat it.
your $500,000? If you're like social media savvy and you have a following that's moving on board?
Kind of. So the question was, can we get someone like an AOC, and I think that's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, not the administrative office of the courts. Switch my brain a little bit. There are actually 4 Democrat socialists running for the assembly. Let's see, they're in the assembly. Sean Navarro. There's a couple in Assembly District 1. Mac Gledhill, they are a UNLV shooting survivor. They use they, them pronouns. And then there are a couple other Democratic Socialists who are running. You know, I think it's easier for those folks in the assembly. It's a smaller section of the population. They could win in the primary. The same thing for conservative Republicans, right? The turnout in the primary, we typically, expect about 20% of the registered party to come out in the primary. That's the number that I use. And the folks who vote in the primaries, they do tend to be a little bit more extreme one way or the other. So it is possible we will see some Democratic Socialists make it out of the primary. If they are not opposed in the general election, then we could see some Democratic Socialists in office. We do currently have a few folks in at least the assembly who lean very much toward that progressive side. Folks like Linda Hunt, Tanya Flanagan, they all kind of have those socialist leanings, but the majority of the party keeps them from getting any of those socialist bills heard.
Does the Washoe County Democrat Party get money to help run the primary?
Yes.
And where
yes.
does that come from then?
So the candidates will give money to the Washoe County Democrat or Republican Party to use some of their infrastructure and network. Also individuals, you know, if you're a member of the Washoe County Democratic Party, you've paid your membership dues and they use that money to help either with knocking doors or sending out, you know, a slate of candidates. They'll say the Washoe County Democratic Party has endorsed these folks. Other groups will do that too. So if you're a member of the Nevada Conservation League or if you're an NV Energy employee, if you're part of the Property Casualty Insurance Association, if you're part of a medical society, they will often put out a list of candidates that they support, and that's after doing interviews with them and, you know, figuring out who aligns with or doesn't align with your views. So those are good things to look at, but I think a lot of those groups, especially the smaller nonprofits related to like climate change, they don't typically put out their slate until after the primary. So you don't have that insight pre-primary, which I think is an issue. You know, this is probably one of the most significant primary elections we're going to have because most of our choices will happen here after the primary. We're done, which is unfortunate.
I may have misunderstood something you said earlier, but if a candidate feels that they have an excess of donations made to them for their campaign, that's unlikely, but I understand. Did you suggest or say that they could give some of that money to another candidate?
They absolutely do that all the time. Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yep.
So we don't even know where our money is going.
Well, you will. You can look it up. You can look online on the campaign finance website.
Yeah, but you've already given it.
You've already given it. You could write and ask for a refund. So say, you know, I donate to Angie Taylor, right? She's a senator here in this district. She's not running this session, but she is a candidate. She is soliciting funds for other people. So she might call you and say, hey, can you donate? I'm trying to help Rochelle Wynn down south, or James Orenshaw, or another one of her Senate Democrat colleagues, and that's where your money would go. Hopefully they tell you before you donate that your money will go to a different candidate, but they should let you know what your money will be used for. And if you're not a fan, if they've sent your money elsewhere, you can always ask for a refund.
If you ask for a refund, are they required to give it back to you?
That's a good question, and I don't know if they're required or not. I have to check. Yeah, I'll have to check. They might. There was a big issue a while back was when Adam Laxalt, I think, was running for governor, and he had received campaign contributions from Lev Parnas and Ivan something or other, folks with ties to Russia and Ukraine and all of that. Wes Duncan, he had some as well, and so they gave those donations back after they were found to be from a foreign entity without a registered agent in Nevada. So sometimes they give them back just because they were illicit contributions, or they felt icky. But I don't know if there's a mandate in law or in regulation, so I'll look that up. Other questions? Cool. Let's talk about some of these races that are going to be really exciting. So I mentioned CD2 already. That's a big one. Let's get into some of these state races. So we'll start with the governor. I think this is more interesting in the Democrat primary here. There are several candidates running, but only two that I think are considered viable on the Democrat side. That's our current Attorney General, Aaron Ford, and then Washoe County Commissioner Alexis Hill. Those are kind of the two top candidates running on the Democrat ticket for governor. There are several others. It's probably a good time to mention that spoiler effect, right? So if you've got enough people, so out of the two, Aaron Ford is the more moderate, Alexis Hill would be more of that progressive voice. But we also have some folks like Sunshine Arterburn running, who is a very liberal, left-leaning, progressive person. And so that candidate may take or spoil some of the votes for Alexis Hill, right? We're splitting that progressive vote. And we'll see what comes out of that. On the Republican side, Lombardo has millions. No other candidate has a chance. And then same for, I would say, the nonpartisans. But again, it's one of the first times I've seen so many nonpartisans running or trying to run. We'll see how many actually get their signatures in on the due date.
Who is running all the ads against Aaron Ford?
That's a Better Nevada PAC. So PACs cannot coordinate with the candidate. So although it's an anti-Aaron Ford ad, it is not a pro-Lombardo ad. He has nothing to do with it. It is a separate PAC that runs that. And you'll hear it at the end. I think you're talking about the high-flying Ford. Is that the one? My grandma's called me about that ad like 3 times. So actually, the Nevada Independent did an analysis of his travel. Most of it is work-related. He also has kids that are in school. He vacations. One of the big ones that my grandma was most concerned about was why is he going to Taiwan so much? And I explained to my grandma, Taiwan is Nevada's sister state and has been since the late 80s. We have a whole corner on the second floor of the legislative building that's dedicated to our partnership with Taiwan. And so this is an ongoing diplomatic issue for Nevada. Yeah, people don't know this.
Are these anti-Ford coming from Republicans or Democrats?
I mean, it's coming from a PAC, and the PACs don't typically have a political leaning. We can assume it's from the Republicans and Democrats. And apologies online, the question was the anti-Aaron Ford ads, are they Republican or Democrat? They're coming from a PAC called a Better Nevada PAC. You can look that up on the campaign finance website and see who it's registered to, see all of the money they've gotten in, and where it's going. So again, back to where does this campaign finance stuff go? Ads, and TV ads especially, are expensive. So go ahead.
You're not supposed to, the law is that the PACs cannot contribute or coordinate with the candidate. Does that law really have any teeth?
Yes, so you cannot coordinate with the candidate, and the candidates try to be really good about that. They don't want to know what the PACs are doing. Don't email them that a commercial is about to come up. They don't want to hear it. So they're pretty darn good about not coordinating. But PACs can give to candidates. So a Better Nevada PAC could give directly to Lombardo or could give to Lombardo's PAC. So typically, at least in leadership in the Senate and Assembly, those candidates, so right now Elaine Marzola in the Assembly, Max Carter in the Assembly, those folks are becoming the leaders in the Assembly Democratic Party. So they've started their own PACs. And you see that again on the Republican side. Senator Titus has her own PAC. Assemblyman Hafen has his own PAC. So they can get money both as an individual, which has restrictions, and in PAC donations, which does not have restrictions. Yes?
Yeah, I have a question. I mean, does the candidate himself know what that message is going to be? So what if he disagrees with the message or the way it's being presented? I mean, every ad that it finishes with, I approve this message or whatever from the candidate, but what if he doesn't? I mean, I would think that would...
Yeah, there are laws about putting out the false advertising and using either images or the voice of a candidate inappropriately. That was something I think that was tackled in the 23 and 25 legislative sessions about the use of AI, the use of deep fakes. So you can't, that would be a violation of campaign law, right? You cannot use a candidate's voice to say they approve a message when they don't. The ones that they can approve are very specific, right? They tend to be like pro themselves. So Aaron Ford could run an ad talking about his platform, his positions, and then saying, I approve this message. That's legitimate. If Lombardo was to run a pro Aaron Ford ad that had lies in it, like I'm pro, I can't even think of what kind of lunacy would come out of an opposite party pro ad, but that would violate our campaign laws.
Paying for sex change operations.
Oh, yeah.
Prisons, yeah.
Yeah, that would be a violation, yeah, because that's, although there's a grain of truth in that, right? And that could derail the whole court case, just because we do in Nevada allow transgender prisoners to be in the facility that aligns with their gender and to use that, be respectful of their pronouns and provide them with appropriate medical care. So there is a chance that some taxpayer money has gone toward gender affirming care for inmates, and that could make that statement true enough to not qualify as misinformation or disinformation. I don't know if I'm making this better or worse for anybody. Hope and despair. Hope and despair. Okay, other questions? I can talk a little bit more about interesting races that are happening. So we mentioned the governor.
Is there any chance that Lombardo will lose, I guess?
Yes. The question was, is there any chance Lombardo will lose? And the answer is yes, because it's an election cycle. There's a chance everybody could lose. I'm anticipating a 50% turnover in our legislators in the state legislature, right? At least 50%, just because of retirements. People have primary opponents, people have good general opponents, so at least 50% change, which is wild. Yes, Aaron Ford has a chance, I would say, similar to CD2, right? This is the best chance Democrats have had in a long time. Whether Aaron Ford is a strong enough candidate against Lombardo, first he has to make it out of this primary, right? And Alexis Hill is working really hard, and she's a great candidate, right? She's not known in the South, which makes it difficult. Aaron Ford has already won a statewide election as Attorney General, so he has name recognition statewide.
And he's a man.
So we have a majority women legislature.
We do have a majority women's legislature and have since, I think, the 2017 session. Yeah, first in the nation. Yeah, which is exciting.
What is the likelihood that the Democratic primary for governor would be lead to a runoff?
What do you mean? So the question was, what is the chance that the Democrat primary will lead to a runoff for governor?
Between Alexis Hill and Aaron Ford.
So it's whoever has a simple majority of the votes goes forward. If they're within like 100 votes, typically the losing candidate will ask for a recount. There has not been an election overturned via recount in Nevada, although they do it when they're close enough. They do pay for a recount. That would come out of Alexis Hill's funding to do that. But I don't think there would be a runoff per se, like we would see in other states.
So somebody's going to get more than 50%?
Yes, yeah. We don't have they'll get a majority. It could be 25 and still be majority.
Can you address the chances of replacing the congressional spot that Amade left vacant?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I think this is the best shot Democrats have had for taking that seat in 20 years. So the question, I forgot again for those online, was what are the chances Democrats take CD2? So there's no longer an incumbent. That's a great news for Democrats. It's hard to run against an incumbent. That's the plain and simple. If there's an incumbent, they're more likely to win. There are a lot of candidates, especially on the Republican side, and so if one of those folks wins who's maybe not as moderate, who doesn't appeal to the moderate voters in Washoe County, better chance for a Democrat to win. We do have Teresa Benitez Thompson, who is running in CD2. She is, an establishment candidate. She was the former chief of staff for Aaron Ford. She has resigned that position to run for this office. Before that, she was majority leader in the assembly at the legislature, so she has that ability. She's a former Nevada beauty queen, and then Her husband is a meteorologist on Channel 8, I think is where he's at. So lots of name recognition, right? For those of you who are, Greg Kidd, he's now running as a Democrat. He ran as an independent last time, and he actually earned more votes as an independent and was closer to defeating Amadei than any Democrat candidate has ever been. So that, but that just goes to show you how the nonpartisans want to vote. And he's also a millionaire who's self-funding his campaign, and as we know, money makes these elections work. Morgan Wadsworth, she's, kind of the underdog candidate, very much on that progressive side of things. She's been doing a really good grassroots campaign, a really great social media campaign, reaching out to younger voters. And Matthew Fonkin, I'll mention him because he called my grandma, and now my grandma is in love with him. She thinks he's the greatest because she talked with him for like 20 minutes. But he also worked at the legislature. He was an attaché. He was a policy analyst there. So there are some good candidates on the Democrat side. It really just depends. In my eyes, TBT, Teresa Benitez Thompson, has the best chance, but only because she is an establishment candidate. She has an established PAC. She knows how to fundraise. She has that built-in network.
She's been pretty effective at the legislature.
It depends on what you think is pretty effective, right? She's gotten some good laws passed. One of hers that I worked with her on back in 2015 was the Social Workers in Schools bill to require that every school has a social worker, one social worker per 250 students. We still haven't gotten there in Nevada. We just don't have the workforce to meet that. She was also instrumental in some mental health bills, things like mandating training for mental health for teachers, for physicians, doing the screening for substance use. So she's done things. She was a hospice social worker for a long time. So she has kind of the social work approach that I appreciate. I really don't want to bias anyone for or against any candidate, but just looking at logistically, she has the infrastructure, she has the experience. And then her likely opponent, in my mind, on the Republican side is James Settlemyre, who is also in the legislature at the same time as TBT. He has been endorsed by Amadei, although Amadei has said he will show up to other people's fundraisers if they ask him to, so I don't really know what he's doing anymore. Sorry, he's he's fine. Fred Simon Jr., he actually ran for governor a few years back. He's a physician. He biked across the state to kind of raise awareness of his name. So interesting guy there. I really don't see a lot of great opportunities, great candidates on the Republican side in CD2 in terms of name recognition outside of James Settlemyre. And of course that Dave Filippo guy who's moved up here and has caused a lot of media attention because he's moving. Just a fun fact, you don't have to live in the congressional district you're running in. You just have to move there after you win. So you can run for any congressional district in the nation as long as you move there after you win. So that's, it doesn't exist like that for our state representatives, obviously, but in Congress, and that's historical, especially for the West Coast, to try and get people to move, in the 1800s out west so they would allow you to run for Congress and then you could move out here when you won. So that is still allowed.
Who do you, what's your gut telling you who has the best chance of beating Lombardo? Would it be Hill or Ford?
What's the question?
The question was, in my opinion, who has the best chance of beating Lombardo, Ford, or Alexis? It's being recorded. I do this for a living. And with all due respect to Alexis Hill, Aaron Ford has won a statewide race before. He has been in state politics for a long time, so he has the name recognition, he has the donor base. Obviously, the conservatives consider him the bigger threat because they started the anti-campaign ads so early in this election cycle. So you can kind of read between the lines there. Who's afraid of whom here? So I do think Aaron Ford is probably the best chance for winning against Lombardo, but only because of his current name recognition and his already statewide wins.
Does Alexis Hill have any name recognition in the South?
No. And the question was, does Alexis Hill have name recognition in the South? And she does not. She started to. She's working on it. Yeah, she's done some fundraising down south. She's gone down and visited. There are progressive groups that are helping her out. But again, we're cannibalizing the Democrat vote because we can't solidify behind one candidate yet.
But there's been progressive waves since you won.
There have been progressive waves. Nevada is not a progressive state, though. Nevada is very much a libertarian state. We are deeply purple, deeply purple. And I like it that way. I want my neighbors to have all their guns and get gay married and grow their marijuana, right? Like that's how it's been described, right? That's Nevada. Apologies. Too flip for a Sunday morning. Other questions? Anybody else here?
I have a question.
Yes, hi Michelle, what's up?
Hi, two things. One, we're at 9:51, just FYI. And then two,
Thank you.
close to the beginning, you said that the candidates need 100 votes of support to get on the ballot. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, so ballot access for a nonpartisan is a little more complicated than for the major parties. So if you are a Republican or a Democrat, you automatically have ballot access in the general election, provided you win in the primary or you don't have a primary opponent. Libertarians also have ballot access because they've received over 5% of the votes in previous elections, so they are automatically guaranteed a spot on the general election ballot. All the other parties, including nonpartisans and independents, have to get 100 signatures in their district to submit prior to, and there's a date in June, or maybe it's May, prior to, no, it's definitely in June. They have to submit 100 signatures from their district to the Secretary of State's office in order to qualify for the ballot in the general election. Most folks who put their name in as nonpartisan, I don't think have read that really strange nuance in the law. And the candidate guidebook that the Secretary of State puts out is a little over 100 and some odd pages, close to 200 pages. I don't know how many of the candidates read through that whole thing. But yes, it is. So it's nonpartisans and other parties that do not have ballot access. And so currently that's Democrats, Republicans, and Libertarians have guaranteed ballot access.
100's nothing but.
Yeah, but you have to do it. And they have to be registered voters in your district. And it can be difficult for those nonpartisans who don't have access to the infrastructure of those major parties to even know who's in their district, to know where their district lines are they actual registered voters, or are they just your neighbor, Yeah. There are a lot of really interesting races. I know we only have like 7 minutes left. So quickly, I want to mention Secretary of State, just because that there is no one running against current incumbent Democrat Cisco Aguilar. There are 4 folks running on the Republican side. The governor has endorsed Shirley Fulkins Roberts. Sharon Engel is also running, so if we're talking about spoiler candidates, Sharon Engel she's good at fundraising. She has name recognition. So she could come out on top of that primary. Jim Marchand, he's a former legislator. He could also win. I'll leave it at that. Yeah. Treasurer, another interesting race on the Democrat side. Joe Dahlia has kind of the backing of the Democratic Party. But Taya Mathis Coleman has been endorsed by our current treasurer, Zach Conine. And for those of you who are following that Attorney General's race, where we have our kind of incumbent, entrenched Democrat in Nicole Cannizzaro, who is running against Zach Conine, our current treasurer, who's always been kind of outside the mainstream of the Democrat Party. He ran for assembly years ago, was not endorsed by the Democratic Party. He said it's because he's a white man. I don't know. I'm not part of those decisions. And then we also have Guzman Frolic, who's been endorsed by the governor, and Danny Tarkanian on the Republican side. So an interesting race in Attorney General, interesting race in the treasurer. And not many folks pay attention to the controller race, but I will note, I talked with Mr. Michael McDougall. He's a Democrat running in a three-way primary for controller, and he has some really interesting ideas for what to do with that office. The controller's office, kind of like our checkbook, they tell us where the state is spending money, and they sit on the board of transportation. And one of his ideas was to require free bus passes for anyone under the age of 26 as part of his role on that board of transportation. And I just haven't heard anybody, A, know what the controller's office is, and B, have an idea of what to do either with that office or on the board of transportation. So just some cool people you meet when you interview them in the primaries, because they may not come back in this election, but they will likely come back later.
Maybe their ideas could percolate.
And maybe their ideas could percolate. Yeah, I like that. So I did not go through all of the races. You do have those spreadsheets. I'll send them out. There's a lot of really interesting races to keep an eye on. And I think that, the splat chart, the summary, where you can see what I consider true races, right, where we will have an election in the general between Republican and Democrat, those are few and far between. There are most of these races are decided in the primary. And then once you get to the general, it's really just down to that voter registration. And most of our districts are majority Republican or majority Democrat. And it's so easy once you're out of that primary to secure that election. So that's
like Washoe County's majority Republican, but the independents swing with us. So.
Yes, yeah. Well, and now statewide, we're mostly nonpartisan. And I know some folks have talked about that as an impact of the DMV, the motor voter registration. So any transaction you have at the DMV, you can update, you can register to vote. That has definitely caused an increase in the number of nonpartisan voters, just because that's the default you're sent to. But there is also a decrease in registered Democrats and registered Republicans to the tune of about 3 to 8%, depending on the district and the party. So we're seeing more than just a defaulting of people to the nonpartisan party. We are seeing people actively leaving both of these majority parties in our state to become nonpartisans.
Is there any legislation about open primaries?
Yeah, kind of. So nothing proposed yet for next legislative session. There have been attempts to have things like open primaries, which would allow, you can vote in the primary, and maybe ranked choice voting. That was also on the ballot not too long ago. It's not, so open primaries, ranked choice voting, any kind of new voting mechanism, typically is not preferred by the entrenched majority parties, right? It's come up as ballot initiatives in the past. Folks like Sandra Cosgrove, Doug Goodman, they've done things like the Fair Districting Initiative, they've done the open primary, ranked choice voting. I don't think we've had a jungle primary proposal yet, but that's also something that folks might consider. But again, it goes back to that. There are lots of folks who think Democrats should vote in the Democrat, Republicans should vote in the Republican, and never the two shall meet.
What is jungle?
Oh, jungle primary?
Yeah.
So right now we have a first past the post system. So you get 50% plus one, simple majority, you win. In those districts where I've pointed out where there are 4 or 5 different candidates, if you have a jungle primary, you vote, you can rank them, or you can have multiple votes in this runoff system, and no one wins until they hit that 50% mark. So right now, if you have a district where there are 4 or 5 primary opponents, the person with 22% of the vote could be the winner, just because everybody else had less than that. 22% is the majority in a 5-way primary. In a jungle primary, you would just move those votes around. You would either re-vote in a runoff, or you would rank them initially, and then those votes would get moved around until somebody hits that 50% mark.
A little more democratic.
A little bit more. Some people argue it's more confusing. I don't think it's more confusing. We do it all the time. Like, we rank where we want to go to dinner, Well, first I'd prefer pizza, but if the pizza place is closed, we'll go to Chinese, right? And even if you get to the pizza place, you rank your toppings. Like, oh man, sausage is $3.50. I'm going to go with pepperoni, right? So I don't think it would be too difficult for folks to do, but it is scary, it is new, and establishment parties hate it.
Sure. Yeah, they want to keep a strong hold on the election.
Yes. Yeah.
So to sum up, what would you say are the reasons for hope in 2026?
Well, no pressure. No pressure. Well, reasons for hope, right? Look at all of us in this room. We're all here on a Sunday morning to talk about what's coming up in our election system. Prior to the primaries, we're learning about how important the primaries are. Maybe some of us know some nonpartisans who are running, so we can remind them, hey, did you get your signatures left? Can I help you out? We know the importance of even that $20, the small dollar donations to those candidates who are so important, who are going to win or lose in the primary. And we still have the ability to vote. I think that's important. Our Secretary of State and our new RAP group has talked about this. Our Secretary of State has put forward a ton of regulations to protect mail-in voting, to protect ballot access, to protect the various languages that we produce our ballots in. So just recently, right, there was a change at the federal level in the way postmarking works. In Nevada, our laws are set with that postmark for your mail-in ballots. So the Secretary of State's office created a regulation this year that says, you know, if it doesn't have a postmark, if your ballot comes in without a postmark, they will assume that it was sent in prior to election day. So they've come up with some workarounds to try and get through the craziness that's happening with our elections so far. And they have both the Secretary of State and the Attorney General's office have vowed to sue, you know, should things like the SAVE Act come through or an executive order limiting access to mail-in ballots, that sort of thing. So we do have, I think, really strong protections through our Secretary of State and our Attorney General for Nevada elections. So if there's some hope for you.
Let me add one other reason for hope. How many rap fans are there? Well, let me change that a little bit, because we have a new rap song called the Rights and Policy Working Group, which has been formed here in the congregation. Consists of Bill, Isaac, and one outsider, myself. We are developing legislative initiatives or actual bills. We have a page-and-a-half list. But we're going to start one by one, and each few weeks have an opportunity to make one phone call or write one letter or one email to one legislator or senator in Congress or the legislature. So it will only take a few minutes, but it's one solid thing you can do to counter the slide toward authoritarianism.
Fantastic.
So that's called the RAP group.
And I'll set my notebook at the back if you want to sign up for those once a week or once every other week rights and policy advocacy moves. Just sign up here and we'll get that going. It's a new group that we just started recently, and we just got board approval to speak on behalf of the UUFNN as the Rights and Policy Working Group. So very exciting. Yeah, I'll put this in the back.
And then at the end, the last Sunday in April, we will be celebrating National Poetry Month, and the title is almost the same as the title of today's Sunday Forum. Hope in difficult times. Ann Keniston will be reading.
We can't do our garden poems.
No, we need more hope.
Thank you all for being here.
Thanks everyone. Thank you online. Bye Dina. Bye Kurt.